Oh boy.
Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Locked On Women's Basketball Podcast, the only podcast where on a week-to-week basis you don't know who the host's going to be. I am your temporary host, Emily Adler. Today we're going to discuss conference previews. Locked On Women's Basketball starts as soon as I can find the intro.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to women's basketball. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Also, if you haven't heard from one of our weekday shows, Locked On Women's Basketball now has a daily newsletter. A one-stop, there should be the word stop there, for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Women's Basketball newsletter. My name is Emily Adler, and I am your Saturday temporary host covering the draft with a focus on player development and the game behind the game. Joining me is Lincoln, who also contributes to our draft coverage here at the next and the Locked On Women's Basketball. We are unfortunately missing our apparently not so trusty regular host, Hunter Cruz, who is unfortunately dealing with a flare-up of a very bad case of gout today. So, Lincoln, now that you're here, why don't we just dive right in? What was the idea that you presented me with for this podcast? I'm going to pretend that I am doing this on purpose and that I don't actually forget.
Oh, we're going to do some conference previews. Conference play has kind of started. A lot of teams played one conference game before the Christmas break. And conference play will be kicking off in earnest this week. And I have it on good authority. There's 16 teams in the SEC. And I think also 16 in the Big 12, if I know how to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 16. 16.
Excellent work, Lincoln.
Yeah, that's good podcasting right there.
No.
Go ahead.
I was to say, why don't we go in reverse order of in descending order of size, which is an excuse to go with the number one team in the country to start off with. That's the Big Ten.
Yeah, UCLA is the number one team in the country. I think they're pretty much prohibitive favorites in the Big Ten. They might be good. They are big and deep and will just pound you to death with offensive rebounds. They have offensive skill. They have a ton of defensive talent. Yeah. And they're the prohibitive favorite in the Big Ten, along with the other new addition in Los Angeles to the Big Ten. USC is probably also in that top tier. It helps to have the best player in the conference.
I was going to make a joke, but I don't think you would take too kindly to an Alexis Markowski joke.
Yeah.
Do you see any way in which USC knocks off UCLA here?
There's a possibility if Juju scores 50, which of anybody in the country, she is the most capable of that. They're kind of depending a lot on freshmen, so it will also depend on their development through conference play. The LA schools this week have Michigan and Nebraska in Los Angeles for games.
Are those tough opponents?
They could be. They are entirely dependent on if the shots go in, those two teams can hang in these
Isn't
games.
that the thing with every team?
That is the thing, is that it's a make or miss league. It's a make or miss game. But they're not. I tiered out the whole Big Ten. Michigan is in my third tier, and Nebraska is in my fourth tier. So
that sounds about right.
Yeah. There's also, I think I made 6 tiers of Big Ten basketball, and it includes several very confusing big question mark teams. Indiana, I don't know what's going on with them. Washington, they're too talented to have played the way that they've played so far.
Yeah.
And Minnesota, will they ever be healthy? Will they ever?
I mean, Mara Braun's done for the year, so yeah, as far as it's relevant for this preview, they're bad, period, with no hope.
Yeah.
As opposed to usually being bad with some hope.
But even without Mara Braun, they're outside of my very bottom tier because we are going to have some competition for spots 15 to 18 that missed the conference tournament because I believe only 14 teams are actually making the Big Ten tournament. They didn't want to actually deal with scheduling more than that. So there's going to be some competition for that 14 spot.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I have no interest in looking up what like the actual rules are there concerning that organization. For now, I'll just say, quick question: do you think there's how bad do you think USC is in trouble with respect to the league finishing top 2 if they don't figure out what they're doing with Kiki Iriashen?
I don't know if there's more than like 2 Big Ten teams that can really punish them for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I maybe outside the top 2, I think if OSU comes on strong, if they get a good Cody McMahon season, they could sneak into that top 2. And depending on how well all the transfers at Maryland have gelled so far, that's another very talented team that if things go exactly right for them. I haven't looked at the scheduling, a USC team playing on the road in Maryland is not necessarily a fun time for them. So time zones are going to be a big deal for this. Who goes to LA? Who goes to play in Seattle? Like Rutgers plays Washington. That's going to be a fun game. Yeah.
Nothing has ever felt more spiritually Big Ten, of course.
Yeah, that is the most Big Ten game possible.
Using that to jump to the next tier really quickly, who do you have in tier 2? I mean, you mentioned Ohio State.
Yep. Ohio State and Maryland are kind of alone in tier 2 for me right now.
To me, they're both teams that I feel like,
teams.
Yeah, we know that they are talented. I feel like their non-conference slate has kind of added more questions, to be quite honest.
That's
like,
fair.
Maryland obviously beat Duke, and Duke needed, as they usually do, they need a few weeks to tune up before, we'll get to the ACC. Getting like 20 and 20 out of Christina Dalsey is probably not the most sustainable strategy. And then as far as Ohio State's concerned, I mean, Illinois is the best team they've played so far.
Yeah.
And they wrecked them.
For sure.
Who's tier 3? Michigan and Indiana, I assume?
Michigan and Michigan State. I've been really impressed with some of the stuff that Michigan State's been doing. Julia Arold is one of my favorite players in the country because she was just a backup wing for 3 years. And then Coach Freilich came in and was like, do you want to be our starting center? And then she was one of the best rim protectors in the country last year. She's just a very fun player. Pairing her with Grace Van Sluten has created very fun things across that whole front court. All sorts of interesting things happening for them in East Lansing.
Yeah, and they have a ton of experience there. It's the quintessential like this is a fun college team.
Yeah.
And that's nice. Michigan is basically the exact opposite.
Yeah, they're
they
the exact
have
opposite.
A ton of youth. I think definitely 4 of their top 8 are freshmen. Another one is technically 3 starters. Yep. Then I think their 7th woman, and then technically their backup center she's an academic junior, but she should be a freshman as far as eligibility. The Russian, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to remember that name off the top. It's like Grabastoya or something.
Yeah. Number 55.
Yes. Very tall. Anyway, so basically the exact opposite. You are relying on a couple veterans who know exactly what they're good at and do it pretty well to just sort of hold down the fort while the freshmen kind of figure out what they're doing on a game-to-game basis. And that's been working pretty well so far.
Absolutely.
Tier 4. Nebraska,
this
Indiana.
Is where it gets messy. Yeah. Tier 4 for me is Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Oregon, Indiana.
I would dispute a couple of those.
Okay, that's fair.
I would say
this is where it starts to get messy for me.
Yeah, I would definitely knock Oregon down. I feel like we've seen them have good games that but aside from the Baylor game, I'm not sure it's come against anyone that we've seen look particularly like a tournament team.
Yeah.
Indiana, I get here. Iowa, yeah. Nebraska feels like the tail. I understand having them here. They feel like the tail end of this tier.
Yeah, this is like the teams
Depending
that
on
are
how Indiana shoots.
probably going to end up hanging around the eddies of the top 25 for most of the season. That will go probably like 9-9 in conference play and be bubble tournament teams.
Yeah. It's the sort of tier where like you're like, okay, these teams should all make the tournament. One of them is going to have a really tough draw of like close games in the middle of February and win the W19 instead.
Yeah.
And then who are the worst teams in this conference?
Well, Washington and Minnesota are in my not the worst teams in the conference tier, but one step ahead of that. And then the bottom five is some combination of Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, Penn State, and Rutgers.
Yep.
All sorts of. There's several very good players on these teams. Sarah Williams at Wisconsin has been tremendous in non-conference play.
Huge
and
leap.
is averaging probably something like 24 and 11, and is the only reason that they're not like 4 and 12. Kiyomi McMiller at Rutgers, we've talked about her before. One of the most fun players in the country. If you like Allen Iverson, if you like Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams, go watch
If you
Kiyomi
like
McMiller.
pure hoop.
If you like hoopers, yeah. And these teams there's combinations of lack of depth, rebuilding, and losing like the best player in program history, that you're just having a combination across these five teams where you're just having just a rough time.
Mm-hmm. So with the biggest conference in the country under our belt, we will move on to the next other power conferences after this break. Welcome back. We are going to now dive into, like, you want to take the ACC or the SEC here?
I think the ACC also has 18, so if we're going inside,
it does.
That'd be next.
Sure, I don't really care. ACC, I'll take the lead on this one because I am a certified blue ribbon panel voter. I don't know why they let me do that, but I do anyway. The class of the ACC is Notre Dame. Like, I don't think we need to specify that. They basically had two weird shooting games on like back-to-back nights, and so they lost to TCU and Utah.
Yeah, they're playing back-to-back, hundreds of miles from home with 6 healthy players.
Yes, and their starting center, the only player in the entire lineup who has not only the height but also like the size to be above literally like 6'1", was a freshman.
Yeah.
Yeah. My only analysis on Notre Dame really at this point is they might have the best two-player combination since 2002 in women's college basketball. That sound right? It's entirely.
That'd be Bird and Taurasi.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They will definitely land somewhere between the best two-player combinations since 2018, 2020 Oregon and 1983, 86 USC. Somewhere in that range, which is pretty damn good.
Tremendously talented.
Yeah. So that's going to happen. And then my only analysis really here is if Kate Koval ever figures out how to actually get the ball in the hoop, like even like 40% of the time, which is, that would be a huge step up over what she's doing. This team might be unbeatable.
Yeah, they're insanely talented across the board. Maybe the two best guards outside of Storrs, Connecticut. And it's just a tremendously talented team. They're getting healthier. They're getting back rotation pieces. Maddie Westbeld is, quote, close to coming back.
She's long been expected to basically return early to mid-January. Yeah. So
in theory, she's only getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of terrifying for a team that has throttled multiple other top 5 teams already.
Mm-hmm. They have only played one game with Lincoln. Who's the transfer from Marquette?
Liza Carlin.
Yes, Liza Carlin, who's a very solid offensive big, can do stuff defensively, but just a nice pick and roll player. They've had one game with her. It went really well. They beat UConn, in case you missed it. So we'll see what happens there. For me, I have exactly one team in tier 2, and it's sort of just two question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Duke. So Duke is very good. Duke can hoop. Duke can legitimately beat any team in the country except for South Carolina, and I say that again because
they play the
you
same
as a
style,
team.
and South Carolina is just better at all the same
Exactly
things that Duke does.
The one thing you can never do is beat another team who is the exact same team as you but better. You just can't do that. That is never going to happen. Duke can, I think, legitimately beat basically any other team in the country.
Yeah.
The question is how consistently.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that? I don't.
Yeah. The answer is.
Does Reagan hit mid-range shots?
Yeah. Are the 14-foot jumpers going in on the baseline? And the question during the tournament last year was a resounding yes. And
until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about how this team is constructed in terms of its wings, which is this is what you want out of a team that is going to be, I think, quantitatively a top 3 defense in the country, qualitatively maybe the best defense in the country, which is you have sort of lockdown ability. You have help defense every position. Everyone is at least a decent enough contributor on offense to make team sets happen, but at the same time, you again talking about like rolling a D20, like we were talking about before with the Nebraska football offense. You get that basically with Duke's offense, where you roll a D20 to see who is going to score like 20-25 points among the wings and the posts. Sometimes it's none of them. Sometimes it's both Reagan Richardson and Lucio Kanema, or it's Ashlyn Jackson. That's sort of the construct you want to be sort of high floor, high ceiling.
You also roll a D20 to see how many seconds you wait before you start the set.
No. The D20 allows for that to happen within 5 seconds, and Duke's never done that.
The next year for me in the ACC is Georgia Tech and North Carolina State, which is not what I would have predicted before the season.
I put UNC in there.
Yeah, UNC. I would give them. They're a talented team.
Tail end of the tier.
Yeah,
they have a lot of trouble beating better
top
teams.
Of my next tier.
Yeah, they have a lot of trouble beating better teams and no problem beating worse teams than them.
That is a great point. Yeah.
But yeah, I think with Georgia Tech and State, we're looking at 2 teams that are very good, especially on offense. Have really high quality guard play. Have a lot of contributors and a lot of solid bench options. And also have like extremely glaring weaknesses when it comes to playing, your Dukes and your Notre Dames.
Well, the weakness for both of those teams is the same, and it's that they don't really have any top tier bigs.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, Termes is a nice player. She's a good passer and she's a good shooter, but like defensively, you're getting mauled. Yeah. It's pretty much the exact same thing. Thankfully, it's not like Toby Fournier is averaging like 20 points. It's not like Liza Carlin is going to hit a lot of layups.
Yeah. Next year is where it gets funky.
Yeah, so we hit on UNC. I would personally put here Louisville, Stanford, and maybe Florida State.
Yeah, that's who I have in there. I'd also consider Cal. It's an old team. They have like 5 6-year seniors in their rotation.
Because the only people who can afford to live in Berkeley, California, are people who are old.
Yeah. They play team offense. They're motion sets and they have good shooters and they're putting things together. And they beat Alabama, which is a pretty solid SEC team. And they were competitive with Michigan State, who's a solid Big Ten team, and they're just kind of pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they are basically like the ACC Illinois. This is a team that has a lot of lower ceiling, lower floor Illinois, which I guess is the ACC overall compared to the Big Ten. I think as a sort of fan base, as a national, as sort of like a media sphere, we still underrate veteran teams. Cal's a great example of this. And yeah, I think they're solid enough. Louisville, again, exact opposite. I have worries about them. Like, obviously, Tatiana Roberts had that hot start. The jumper is still, questionable. It'll come along. Her game is really, really good. But like, sort of, if Olivia Cochran isn't giving you 16 and 10, and Taj isn't getting up to the high teens in scoring, it's rough. It's a rough process.
For sure.
Florida State's putting up 90 on anyone. But their defense and their supporting cast has gotten worse than in recent years, so it's a harder thing. And Stanford might be a true talent, 42% three team from deep.
Yeah, very good shooters. And then the bottom of the ACC, I have two teams.
Everyone else just kind of mashes in together.
Yeah, but I still have two separate tiers here with we don't have to talk about these teams really. Boston College, Syracuse,
good, because we don't have enough time.
UVA are bad, but they're not as bad as Pitt, SMU, and Wake Forest.
Yep. Pitt, SMU, and Wake Forest is going to be a very fun look there to see who might actually be the very first team in the entire Power Four. Yeah. Coming up after the break, we will discuss
in the Big 12.
We will discuss that conference, then close out on the SEC. And we're back. Big 12 time. We're saving the SEC for last, so that you guys have to listen to us.
Well, and it's because the Big 12 is the conference that I understand the least of what's going on here.
I think the Big 12 understands the least of what's going on there, too.
That's a great point. Like, my top tier is Kansas State and TCU, and I don't feel great about either of those being a conference title contender in this conference.
What is this, a 2022 college football season?
Yeah, and then when you get below that, it's like Iowa State and West Virginia.
This is Baylor's lander.
I mean, Baylor has been struggling.
Bad by their own standards, but like, look, they didn't lose to Colorado.
Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of which,
Colorado, that was
next
a weird game,
I would say.
With like Utah and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about teams that like are well enough coached and have enough talent in terms of that tier that can sort of knock off other people enough, and that's gonna, because it's the Big 12, that's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I realized we kind of just skimmed by the top tiers. Jumping back there a little bit, Kansas State and TCU are definitely the top tiers. I think for me with TCU, it's just
veteran.
I trust in what Haley Van Lith is doing right now, which is just sort of run the pick and rolls, kick out to shooters who are in the right places. That is an excellently coached team. Their scheme is really spot on. It makes Haley's life a lot easier, sort of like it was. Makes it like it was when she was a sophomore at Louisville. For me, it really comes down to whether Sedona Prince is going to keep being as solid as she's been. And there's enough good post defenders in this league. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And Kansas State is Kansas State, right?
Yep.
They are mostly the same team they've been in recent years. They might be a little bit better, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Ziana Walker, the Glenn twins, and one of the best shooters in the country. What is it's? I don't know.
About the Cincinnati transfer?
Yes.
Yes. The power forward transferred it from Cincinnati, who's starting in that lineup.
I'm putting it together. We're getting there.
God, we're such good podcasters.
Terrence Sides.
No, she's good, but she is the backup. Kansas State's starting power.
Yeah, but Terrence Sides is shooting the absolute.
Tamira Poindexter, I was thinking of.
I was thinking that Terrence Sides is
shooting. Oh God, she is. Jesus Christ.
54% from the field, 53% from three.
Good Lord Almighty. The second tier was West Virginia.
Iowa State,
Iowa State, and then loosely Baylor. Yeah, West Virginia is
diametrically opposed teams.
West Virginia is the shortest good team in the country,
so
and like
small.
Yeah, dude. So basically, the press is either the press works, or they play a talented veteran team, and it's probably not going to work at all. And then you're just praying that Jordan Harrison and JJ Quinterly combine for 60 points. If they don't, you're screwed.
West Virginia starts 4 players that are 5'10" or shorter.
And I believe their starting big is only 6'3".
Yes, they don't have anyone on the roster over 6'3". Their backup bigs come in and they're 6'1.5".
And they're not good. They're actually very bad.
It's devastating because their starting backcourt is a 5'6" point guard, a 5'7" combo guard,
5'6"
and a
Cooper,
5'8" and a 5'8" combo guard.
You love to see it.
Yeah,
Reminds
fascinating team. Weird team.
And then Baylor should be better than they actually. Iowa State. Iowa State. We know what they're going to do. Audie Crooks is a good post scorer, not a great post scorer, and she is a fine but not necessarily good playmaker. So that limits what you can do as an offense. Kennedy Brown's sister, Addie Brown. Very nice wing. Can't shoot the three like Ashley Jones could. Is not going to destroy anyone off the dribble. So you're basically looking at just like a light version of Peyton Verhulst here.
And they're gonna miss Mackenzie Hare.
They really need more shooting than they have, which is a weird thing to say about Iowa State. But here we are. And then Baylor is really talented, but their guards have at best regressed a little bit. Kennedy Fauntleroy needs to shoot like 45% on 6 threes. She basically needs to shoot like Katie Lou Samuelson.
Fauntleroy, not Kennedy Fauntleroy.
Kennedy Fauntleroy.
Kennedy Fauntleroy is at Oklahoma State and then Arizona State, and
former Big East freshman of the year. Yeah, they suck. They need Bella Fauntleroy to basically shoot like Katie Lou Samuelson. That's not who Bella Fauntleroy is, because otherwise no one is hitting those threes except for when Sarah Andrews just like holds the ball for 5 seconds and then just pulls up without dribbling. The Aaronette Vonleh experiment is not going as smoothly as it should, but it's probably going to get better. We think Nikki Collins is a good coach, so that'll probably get better. And then everyone else in the conference that we haven't mentioned already is bad, right?
Specifically, I think that Houston and Arizona State have a chance to challenge Pitt and Wake Forest for the bottom in the power conferences title.
Yep. Other teams that exist in this conference are Texas Tech, Utah. We mentioned Utah.
Yep.
Colorado, who is we already mentioned Colorado. Kansas, they exist.
Smiley Nichols is very fun.
Smiley Nichols is very fun. Moving on to the final power conference, because the idea of a Power Five still existing in women's basketball is just UConn propaganda to make it seem like their wins records are more legitimate than they actually are. The Big East
I'll pick Wazoo to win the Pac-12 this season.
I'm going to Oregon State.
That feels bold.
Hey, they lost by exactly 19 to Arizona State, Illinois, and UConn, which I will keep pointing out because it's really weird.
The SEC, South Carolina is going to win it.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they don't.
Number 2 team is Texas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are good. They don't know what they're doing in terms of their wing rotation.
They're
I'm not sure Vic
very
Shafer.
Good defensive teams.
Yes. Jordan Lee and who is the freshman big?
Justice Carlton.
Yes, those are 2 very interesting freshmen. Carlton is fun in a Vic Shafer kind of way.
Justice, I think was top 10 in last year's class.
Yes, and then Jordan Lee, I think, was not too much lower.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Deanna Gaston, which they are very clearly feeling because they have to play. Taylor Jones, who, I'm also surprised that she's still allowed to play college basketball. They're playing her way more than they necessarily want to, especially defensively. But they're still good. They've still got Madison Booker. Yep. Rory Herman is also there. Yep. I didn't mean that slander. Genuinely, she's also good. Layla Filia may eventually score, and then this team would be very good. Until then, it's just quite good. Oklahoma is number 3, right? Number 3 going away.
The next tier for me is something like Oklahoma, Tennessee, LSU.
I would put Oklahoma in their own tier at this point.
That's fair.
Oklahoma. Oklahoma. Reagan Beers is as good as you think she is. Not better, to be clear, but that's more than good enough. Peyton Verhulst is way better than you think she is. She's insane. She is so good.
Reagan Beers being exactly as good as you thought she was is kind of exactly the thing that this Oklahoma team needed.
Yes, I mean, Jenny Baranchik is the kind of coach that we've said for a couple of years. It's like, man, can you imagine if they just like landed insert like great center here and then it happened? It's like Duke with like a scoring wing. It's like NC State with a competent post defender. It's great.
Yeah.
That's Oklahoma. If Oklahoma's off-ball guards, sorry.
Tennessee's going to put up 140 points on someone in. It was almost NC Central.
I don't think it can get much worse, to be quite honest.
That's fair. I mean,
go
Arkansas.
One of those 2 teams is a lot more likely to lose its coach this season.
Yeah.
Tennessee surprisingly good. Kim Caldwell actually clearly knows what the hell she's doing, as you can tell, because all the transfer wings there are playing way better than they ever did under.
Shout out to Lasia Cooper.
Shout out to Ruby Whitehorn.
Yeah. But Talaysia Cooper's putting up like absurd numbers. Some of the best numbers in the country.
Yes, she was also a higher pedigree recruit and came from South
exactly.
Carolina, whereas Ruby Whitehorn was at Clemson, where talent goes to die.
One of those teams is the better South Carolina team. Nobody knows which one.
One of them has a lake.
Yeah.
What was it the
Ole
team in
Miss,
this year?
Mississippi,
LSU.
LSU, Vandy, Kentucky, Bama. Good teams that are going to do something.
Let's briefly mention the University of Mississippi and LSU, because I think those are the only other two that like we look at and say definitely tournament teams, right?
For sure.
Mississippi. Talk to me about their freshman wing, because I haven't watched them since the UConn game. The wing was struggling there.
She's finding her own. It's kind of the same Mississippi teams that you've seen before, in a lot of ways. Maddie Scott's doing a lot of the same things. She's long, athletic. They have long athletes all over the place. But Sierra Thanu, freshman wing at Mississippi, is shooting 48% from three on 2.5 attempts per game, which is eye-catching because when you account for the Old Miss stagflation, 12 points and 5 rebounds for her translates to like 16 points and 8 rebounds on a normal team. She's really shooting the ball well this season.
Speaking of shooting the ball well, KK Dean's ACL has been repaired, and she's playing well there. So Mississippi, and it's the same, but there's 3 new players, so it's different. LSU, actually very different than last year. Different. They don't have the juice. They don't have the dog.
They lost Angels 4 times. Dog
factor multiplier.
Yeah, the dog factor multiplier is gone, and they look mortal.
Yeah, they still have a lot of talent. They are going to be maybe the only team in the country who can take as many mid-range shots they're going to take and actually make them in a good enough clip to be worth it. Shout out Flyja Johnson and Michaela Williams. They legitimately they legitimately might have 2 of the top 3 players in the conference, quite frankly.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
And they are not. By the way, I was referring to Michaela and Flyja when I said that.
Yeah.
Anise Morrow is good, but not good enough to make up for what they're missing with Angel, is basically how I'd put it.
Yeah.
They're a good team. And
they're going to get killed by teams that are bigger and score in the paint a lot.
If they don't get that dog in them and Samaya
Smith playing some.
Thank you. Samaya Smith doesn't add another like 3 more inches of vertical since the ACL tear, Achilles tear, I think it was last year.